tonight. Our text will be Isaiah chapter 15. How many of y'all, anybody already looked at Isaiah 15? No? Well, just ruined my plan for the intro. Tell you. I mean, I was just going to say, I'm sure some of y'all, if you looked at it, you probably looked at it and thought, whoo, we'll get out of here early tonight. Rub it in, okay? Just rub that on in a little bit. In fact, Isaiah 15, verse number 1. You remember we looked last week at Babylon, and we pick up here in verse 15, or chapter 15, and verse number 1. And I want to just talk for just a minute about, this is the burden of Moab. Talk a little bit about Moab. Anybody know where or who the founder of Moab is? You're getting close. So, Moab was the son, essentially it was the son of Lot, but was the son of Lot through incestual relationship between him and his daughter whenever they got him drunk after the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. And so the Moabites, they settled in the plains to the south of southeast of Israel. Anybody know what that area is today? No. One of them over there is right. Yes. You get a sticker. I tell you, one of them over there. All right, we're Christmas treeing now. It's Jordan, and at times the Moabites were great enemies of the nation of Israel, and it was Balak who was king of Moab when he was him who hired Balaam, the prophet, hoping that he could curse Israel. It was Eglon, the king of Moab, who oppressed Israel in the day of the judges. And you can go back for Balak, you can find reference to that in Numbers chapters 22 through 25, and then in Judges chapter 3, verses 12 through 30, you find the mention of Eglon there, who oppressed Israel during the time of Saul and David. Israel actually established a firm control over Moab, but later kings of Israel were not always able to keep them under Israeli dominance. And Moab also has a great connection with Israel. Again, I've already mentioned to you the connection because of Lot being Abraham's nephew and Moab being the son of Lot through that relationship with his daughter. Because of this, God told Israel in Deuteronomy chapter 2 that they were not to destroy Moab, take their land. So because of that relationship, they were told not to. But then another connection that you have, anybody know any other connections that Moab has? Ruth. What's the connection that Ruth has? It's where she was from. What else? How does that connection tie into Israel? She married Boaz. She was David's paternal grandmother, the greatest king of Israel. And so David actually, whenever he was fleeing and was fugitive of Saul, David actually entrusted his mother and father to the king of Moab, and so for this reason, there's when you begin to bring all that together, and you see the connection that Israel has with Moab. Yes, there's Moab. There's been some issues there between the two. There's been conflict, and unfortunately, but there's still great connection, right? I mean, even so much so that God said, "You will not destroy Moab, and you will not take their land." So whenever you see that, and when you read that first, we talked about the burden last week with Babylon and what that word burden means, and how it's something that's heavy, it's weighty that we carry. And this is when you start thinking about the condition of people and whether they're lost or saved, and them dying and going to hell, to me, that's one of the, I get that war is inevitable, and I get that people are going to pass away as a result, but the greatest tragedy of that is that those people that pass away are going to one of two places, right? And unfortunately, probably a lot of them end up spending eternity in hell because they didn't have a relationship with Jesus Christ. And so that makes this judgment, it makes it a heavy burden. It makes it a burden to have to even share the information. But, when you think about Moab and the connection there, a little bit more, there's a great deal of sadness, a great deal of empathy on Isaiah's part as he describes that coming judgment of Moab. And so we read the rest of verse number 1, and we're going to read down through verse number 4. It says, "Because in the night Ar of Moab is laid waste and brought to silence. Because in the night Kir of Moab is laid waste and brought to silence. He's gone up to Bajith and to Dibon, the high places, to weep. Moab shall howl over Nebo and over Medeba. On all their heads shall be baldness, and every beard cut off. In their streets they shall gird themselves with sackcloth. On the tops of their houses and in their streets every one shall howl, weeping abundantly. And Heshbon shall cry. And Elealeh, their voices shall be heard, even unto Jahaz. Therefore the armed soldiers of Moab shall cry out. His life shall be grievous unto him." So when we look at this and we understand a little bit, I already have established the history of Moab. These names that are mentioned are names of cities, locations within Moab. And so God announces his coming judgment to Moab. And again, it's interesting when you study this, a lot of these cities that are mentioned, at one point in time, they were originally a part of Israel's territory. They belonged to Israel. And so what happened, when they belonged to him, but when Moses and Joshua defeated Sihon, the king of the Amorites, all the cities to the north, and I probably should have given you a map or some kind of illustration of this, but all the cities to the river, or north of the Arnon River, belonged to the tribe of Reuben. And throughout the years, during that time, after they took possession of those cities, the Moabites would just they just pressure their way and push their way and persist their way in, and they would, push the Israelites out of those regions. But so at one point in time, these cities actually belonged to Israel. It says he's gone up to the temple. When you read this, you understand that it's a picture of a man that is running. He's fleeing, and he's going to he's running to his temple, to his pagan gods, for protection and mourning, to the high places to weep, is what it says there. But it's going up to the temple. That is the high places that he talks about. And so he goes on, and he says that they'll clothe themselves with sackcloth. Everybody's going to be weeping bitterly, and this invasion, and as a result of it, there's going to be a lot of distress. The shaving of their heads, the shaving of their beards, the sackcloth and the ashes all represent a time of mourning, a time of sadness and distress in Moab. And so that's going to be the picture that is there. And Jeremiah chapter 48 also actually prophesies about the coming judgment of Moab, and gives some reasons why that they will be judged. And he says that Moab has been at ease from his youth. He's settled on his dregs. He's not been emptied from vessel to vessel, nor has he gone into captivity. And so he says that his time, his taste remained in him. His scent has not changed. Therefore, he says, behold, the days are coming that I shall send him wine workers who will tip him over and empty his vessels and break the bottles. That's an excerpt from Jeremiah chapter 48. But when we're at ease, that's the idea. That's the picture that Jeremiah presents. They've been at ease. They've not had any issues. They've never been poured from vessel to vessel, and they're never refined. That's one of the things God has certainly worked on Israel. He tried to refine Israel, and they've gone through some hard times because God has. But Moab's never experienced that. They don't know what that's like. They've never even really experienced, because, hey, God has told Israel that you'll not destroy them, nor will you take their land. So really, they've kind of been at ease. And so, not only do you have, when I was thinking about Moab, and I thought about the picture, because last week, remember, we said that this is an image, when you have Babylon, that's a reminder to the Israelites. The message was never delivered to the Babylonians that there was a coming judgment. But it was delivered to the Israelites because they needed the reminder that God is a just God and that He is going to punish evil works. He is not going to stand by idle and let them, even though they're prospering, even though they're growing, and they're quickly going to become a powerhouse of a nation. But when you look at Moab, it's kind of like, God, you told us not to do anything to them. You told us to leave them alone. And yet no one messes with them. They may not be a powerhouse, but they don't deal with any hardships. They've never, they don't have those problems, and and so they've never experienced that refining process. And I don't know if you've ever experienced any of God's refining process, but it ain't always pleasant. Amen. And so, this is they're not accustomed to this, and so they're going to enter into a great mourning. Verse number 5. And we'll read down through verse 7. My heart shall cry out for Moab. His fugitives shall flee unto Zoar, and heifer of 3 years old. For by the mounting up of Luhith, with weeping shall they go it up. For in the way of Horonaim they shall rise up a cry of destruction. For the waters of Nimrim shall be desolate. For the hay is withered away, the grass faileth, there is no green thing. Therefore the abundance they have gotten, and that which they have laid up, shall they carry away to the brook of the willows. So he uses a phrase here, a word. It says that the fugitives shall flee. It's interesting because the city, Zoar, is actually a city that was considered a city of refuge for Lot and his daughters. This is where they escaped from, hiding in the mountains, and before his daughters committed incest with him, birth to the child Moab, who is the father of the Moabites. But Zoar is actually called a heifer of 3 years old. That's what it's called. And apparently to indicate that it had never been under the yoke of strangers is what I have found about it. But he says the green grass is withered away. Remember now, whenever Lot chose where he was going to camp, where he was going to set up and establish himself, remember he chose the greenest pastures. He chose the best of the best. And Abraham let him have it. And so this area that they're in is still a part of that. It's a very lavish area when it comes to grazing land for cattle and animals. And so, but now, all that's fine and good. But guess who can take that away? Yeah, I'm glad you got that, because I was starting to get a little concerned. God can take that away. He can take it away at any point in time. And so, now under this judgment, the green grass, he says, is withered away. It's not there. They don't have it. And so the abundance that they've gained, they're going to carry away to the brook of the willows. And so what you have here is you have a picture, again, an image that is being created, an image of these refugees that they've gathered everything that they have. They've gathered their possessions with them, and they're carrying it with them. There's nothing left for them there. And so the refugees are fleeing, and he says they're going to carry it away with them to the brook of the willows. Verse number 8 and verse number 9. For the cry is gone round about the borders of Moab, the howling thereof unto Eglaim, and the howling thereof unto Beralim. For the waters of Dimon shall be full of blood. For I will bring more upon Dimon, lions upon him that escapeth of Moab, and upon the remnant of the land. The cry. The cry has gone all around the borders of Moab. Their pain in the midst of judgment is not going to be able to be hidden. It's going to be evident. Everybody's going to know that they're in that situation. And everybody around the borders of Moab would see God's judgment against them. And so he says that the lions upon him who escaped from Moab. If judgment of the night attack did not complete the work of judgment, then God says he would send lions upon those that escape. That's when I read that, it makes it just that much more evident to me that there is absolutely, when God says that somebody or something is going to be under his judgment, there is no escaping it. None. And so, again, you look at this and you see Moab and you see the situation and you see the condition and you see, again, here's a nation that they've had little issues with Israel, but they've essentially been left alone. You know, I would look at it like this. Moab is probably that person. Let's just look at it in the sense of a person. Moab's that person that they ain't bad. They're okay. Every now and then they act out. But you know, overall, they're not bother us too much, right? Morally, they may be good people. But the problem is they still have missed the mark, right? You and I, if you're a child of God, you've missed the mark, but guess what? You've got the blood of Jesus covering you. You've got Babylon, who is extremely wicked, extremely ungodly. I mean, now Moab was not innocent by any means. But if you were to compare the two, you'd say, yeah, Moab ain't near as bad of a person as Babylon. But here's the reality. Not being as bad as Babylon does not make them exempt from God's judgment. The only thing that makes us exempt from God's judgment is being right with God. And the only way today that we can be right with God is to have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ, to put our faith and trust in Him and Him alone for salvation. That's it. And so, but please know that when God is pouring out His judgment, that there is no escaping that. And so we're going to continue on into chapter 16 since y'all were so excited about getting out early. Which verse of 9? It says, escapeth of and upon the remnant of, whoever's left behind. No, that's not the same remnant of that's going to return. No, this is a remnant of Moab. We look at verse number 1, verse number 2 to start with. Send ye the lamb to the ruler of the land, from Selah to the wilderness, unto the mount of the daughters of Zion. For it shall be that as a wandering bird cast out of the nest, so the daughters of Moab shall be at the fords of Arnon. So send the lamb to the ruler of the land. The idea behind this is that Moab should, there was a point in time, if you were to go back to 2 Kings chapter 3, you would find that there was a point in time that under Mesha, who was the king of Moab, that Moab would pay tribute to Israel. However, they stopped doing that when King Ahab died. They just quit. Ahab, king of Israel. And so here, what the idea behind this is that Moab, you should continue your tribute to Israel. You should resume bringing that tribute to Jerusalem and submit yourselves to God again. There was a time. There was a time where y'all did that. But they've fallen away and they quit. And so Isaiah, in what he's saying, is issuing a counsel really to Moab to resume that payment of tribute. He says, he talks about a bird here. That a bird that's cast out of the nest, or a bird that's thrown out of the nest. And, really you think about a bird that falls out of a nest. Give me one word that describes that bird. Helpless. It's the exact word I had. Helpless. That bird is absolutely helpless. They are, and oftentimes, I can imagine, and I don't know how anybody could ever really prove this. We can prove that they're helpless. But I would imagine that there is a state of confusion there. You go from being in one place to all of a sudden you're in another and you didn't put yourself there. Would you not be confused? I would be. Sometimes I'm confused when I put myself in places. Right? Any rest of y'all ever experienced that? So, yeah, it's like, wait a minute. Yeah, you can just keep your comments to yourself. I say it, they can come get me, whatever, it don't matter. But, there's a sense of, I'm sure there's a sense of confusion, that bird has. And so really when you look at that, he's referencing that's how Moab's going to be. They're going to be helpless. They're going to be confused under the hand of God's judgment. And, like that bird that's thrown out, they're going to be confused. They're going to be weak. They're going to be vulnerable. And, their only resource, the only thing that they can do at this point is to submit themselves to Jerusalem. That's it. To go back and do what you were doing once again. And so that's the encouragement there that Isaiah is issuing, is that they should go back. Verse number 3. Take counsel. Execute judgment. Make thy shadows as the night in the midst of the noonday. Hide the outcasts. Bewray not him that wandereth. So he says that they should take counsel, execute judgment. But really, to me, when you get down to it, the key parts of this verse, I think the take counsel and executing judgment, I think comes with their submission back to Jerusalem. When you submit yourselves back to Jerusalem, to the king, you should probably take counsel from him. You should probably allow him to execute judgment there. And so, but he says, hide the outcast. Hide the outcast. Isaiah is in compassion of his prophecy, pleads with the rulers of Judah to hide the outcasts of Moab. And when you think about this and you see the plea that's there, why didn't we see that plea with Babylon? Why? Why would we see Isaiah make such a plea for Moab? But we hadn't seen it we didn't see that with Babylon. We hadn't seen anything about the Assyrians. 100%. Well, it doesn't even matter about the lineage that Jesus was going to. It's just that connection that they have. He knew. He's aware. Listen, it should be like anything else. When you have that connection, and again, liken it to people, right? Liken it to because this is talking about God's judgment, right? We know about God's judgment that's to come, right? This judgment already passed. It's done. It's dealt with. But there's a judgment that's to come that we know about. And so whenever you think about that, listen. First of all, I'm thankful that I'm set free and set apart from that judgment. Right? And so when I think about that judgment, I don't think about, hey, I have to go through that, because I don't have to go through that. And so Isaiah, would be easy for Isaiah to be like, well, that's Moab. Good luck, fellas. It's not going to be pretty. But there's some compassion there. There's some compassion to where he says, listen, hide the outcast, hide please the outcast of Moab, and so I cannot help but to think that the reason for that is because of that connection that they have with Moab. And so I think about that, and I think, you know what? Hey, I know of the judgment that's to come, and I know full well that anybody that does not have a relationship with Jesus Christ is going to experience that judgment. So therefore, I should have some compassion. I should want to protect however many people I can. Even more so the people that I have a connection with. Those that are somehow connected to me. Because chances are they've been put in my path. For me to share the gospel. For me to teach them and share Jesus with them. And and so he says, don't betray him who escapes. It's pretty powerful. When you read that and you see what he says there about, again, that's what he says, bewray not him that wandereth. Don't betray the ones that are able to escape. Wow. It's not going to be easy to escape, by the way. Right? It's not. Why do we know it's not going to be easy to escape? You can't. But if they get there, if they make it to Judah, if God allows them, the only way they make it there is if God allows them to get there, right? It's the only way. But when they get there, don't betray them. You don't do anything to them. And I'll be honest with you, whenever I look at that, and in fact, I think the complete opposite of betraying them. I think, hey, you better welcome. Isaiah's pleading with them, welcome them in, accept them, love them, care for them. The same way that we as a church, whenever somebody who's lost comes in the doors of this church, I don't care what their past is. I don't care how bad of a person they were. We're to love them. We're to have compassion on them. Because if they made it here, it's maybe the only chance they have to escape the judgment that's to come. So who are we to treat somebody poorly? Because guess what? It could have very easily been you or I as the one that's trying to escape that judgment, looking for someone, looking for a place of refuge. And so that's what Isaiah, he wants Judah to be a place of refuge and protection for Moab as they're under this judgment. And again, that's what we, the church, should be when people when people receive judgment that fits their rebellion against God. If they flee and find refuge, they should be able to find refuge here. place that'll hide the outcast, receive the ones that escape, and never betray them. Verse 4 through 5. Let mine outcasts dwell with thee, Moab. Be thou a covert to them from the face of the spoiler. For the extortioner is at an end. The spoiler ceaseth. The oppressors are consumed out of the land. And in mercy shall the throne be established. And he shall sit upon it in truth in the tabernacle of David, judging and seeking judgment and hasting righteousness. So again, a little bit of a sudden change of focus. You know, going back in Isaiah 16:3, Judah was counseled to receive the outcast of Moab. Now Moab, y'all, this is, if your head don't hurt sometimes after reading your Bible, you may not be reading it right. Because now Moab is being asked to do what? Yeah, receive. They're being asked to receive the outcast of Judah. Yeah. There's some commentators that believe that these two verses are end-time prophecy, which is interesting, and I can see some of that. Just from, if you study Revelation at all, you'll see a little bit of it there but this would be end-time prophecy for Jews to flee to Moab during the tribulation period as they flee the Antichrist. And so, in fact, in Revelation, they'll flee, Moab. The Jews, Israel, will flee from the fury of the Antichrist, and they will find refuge, according to the Scriptures, in places like Moab. And so Revelation in chapter 12 mentions that, and so they'll be protected from the face of the spoiler, who is, that's another word for the Antichrist, until devastation ceases and the oppressors are consumed out of the land. And so, again, it's Isaiah just plops that right smack dab in the middle of his story, or of his prophecy there. And so, just kind of an odd place in my opinion, but it's there. He says, in mercy the throne will be established. And so in those times, the throne of the Messiah will be established, and the Messiah himself will sit on the throne, and one will sit on it in the truth, in the tabernacle of David. He'll reign. His reign will be wonderful, judging and seeking justice and hastening righteousness. And so, anyway, verse number 6 through 8. We have heard of the pride of Moab. He's very proud. Even his haughtiness and his pride and his wrath. But his lies shall not be so. Therefore shall Moab howl for Moab. Everyone shall howl. For the foundations of Kirharaseth shall ye mourn, surely they are stricken. For the field of Heshbon languish, and the vine of Sibmah, the lords of the heathen have broken down the principal plants thereof. They are come even unto Jazer. They wandered through the wilderness. Her branches are stretched out. They are gone over the sea. Where he says that we have heard of the pride of Moab. It's the only place, interesting enough, it's the only place that the sin of Moab is identified or mentioned. When he says that we know the pride, it's the only place it's detailed, and it's significant that Moab's sin was was pride, because, again, as I mentioned, we've seen God talk about the pride of the Assyrians, right? When He uses them for judgment against Syria and against Israel and against Judah, they're going to get puffed up. They're going to be prideful, and that's part of their problem. And then we've seen God talk about the pride of Babylon, and that's part of their problem. It's interesting whenever you think about Moab. Moab is relatively small. They're relatively insignificant in the grand scheme of things, but they're still prideful. You don't have to be somebody to have a problem with pride. There's some very casual folks that have problems with pride. There's some very insignificant nations to this day that have a problem with pride. And so, again, it's interesting because, again, they're not really, not much there for them. I mean, again, but just shows us that the seemingly small can be just as consumed with the pride as the great. And so, just like Assyria and Babylon, Moab is extremely proud. This pride is also referred to in the prophecy and judgment of Jeremiah in Jeremiah 48, that he would judge the proud nation. So, I mean, again, just for that to be the sin that's detailed of Moab, Jeremiah chapter 48 also says, so that Moab should wail for Moab, and we see that Moab here in Isaiah. He says that Moab shall howl for Moab. That's weep, that's wail, and so they took great. Not only did they have the green pastures, but they were considered to have some of the most amazing vineyards. And boy, they took pride in those vineyards. And but God used the nations to break them down and destroy everything that Moab took pride in. Listen, I'm going to be honest with you. There's only one thing that we should take pride in, and that's that we serve the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. We have no business taking pride in anything else, because you want to know why? Everything else that we have is His. The greatest thing that I have and the greatest thing about me is that I get to be a servant to the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. That's it. Nothing else should I take pride in. And so Moab had been advised to seek help from Zion's king. But even though the seer foresaw at the same time the futility of this advice on account of Moab's pride, and so we move down to verses 9 through 12. Therefore I will bewail with the weeping of Jazer, the vine of Sibmah. I will water thee with my tears, O Heshbon, O Elealeh, for the shouting for thy summer fruits and for thy harvest is fallen, and gladness is taken away, and joy out of the plentiful field, and in the vineyards there shall be no singing, neither shall there be shouting. The treaders shall tread out no wine. In their presses I have made their vintage shouting to cease. Wherefore my bowels shall sound like an harp for Moab, and mine inward parts for Kir-Haresh. And it shall come to pass, when it is seen that Moab is weary on the high place, that he shall come to his sanctuary to pray, but he shall not prevail. Isaiah, as Isaiah, he says, I will bewail. And this is Isaiah talking. He takes, by the way, I also find this interesting, he's taking no pride, no joy in foretelling of this judgment to come on Moab. Again, something else we've not seen. Something else we've not experienced with Isaiah. But now, I mean, in his own words, that he will bewail the vine of Sibmah. And he says, I will drench you with my tears. I will be broken. This is, he's prophesying about this, but let me just tell you something. Isaiah ain't happy. You know, how often do we think about that, man, if my enemies would just get what they got coming to them. Be excited about it. Can I tell you, we should never rejoice in the judgment of God on anybody. You don't know why? Because I deserve the judgment of God. That could have been me. It should be me. I'm not worthy of what Christ did for me. I'm not worthy of Him laying down His life and taking my place and literally taking the wrath of God upon Himself so that I don't have to literally go to hell for me and conquer death, hell, and the grave. Boy, I don't deserve that. If you're honest with yourself, you don't either. And so we should never rejoice over the, again, when we have the proper perspective, and I believe that, again, I get it, the connection that Isaiah or that Israel had with Moab is different, but I'm just going to tell you the connection that we have with everybody is different. We know this ain't about nation against nation. Amen? I'll tell you, it was really hard, and maybe you've experienced some of the same stuff. It was really hard. My first real experience with or knowledge or understanding of any kind of what, no matter where you any thought of another nation attacking our nation was 9/11. And as soon as I really began to understand who they said was behind that, there was a little bit of hatred stirred up in my heart. And you know what? Every person that I saw that looked like that, I unjustly judged them. But let me just tell you something. Even right now, even in the mess that we got going on right now, that we're a part of, it's easy to unjustly judge somebody who looks like an Iranian. Can I just be very honest with you? When you go to the Middle East, a lot of them look alike. In fact, a lot of them look like Jesus would have looked. Because Jesus didn't look like you and me. I hate to tell you that. He wasn't fair complected. He was Oriental, if you want to get down to it. But even in the midst of what we got going on right now, it's bigger. And this is where we as Christians have to understand, have to have the right perspective, because this is how God sees it. God sees all the fuss and fighting. But in reality, you know what He sees? He sees lost people and saved people. By the way, every one of which, I don't care which nation they represent. I don't care what flag they have on their uniform. You understand that Jesus died for every single one of them. I mean every one of them. And so we have to have the right perspective when it comes to it. And so whenever it comes to judgment and beginning to think about somebody experiencing the judgment of God, it should break our hearts, just like this is breaking Isaiah's heart to share the judgment that's to come. So he's not happy about it. And again, this is still, even with that connection, this is a rival nation. They've had conflict with Moab before. And so this is a rival nation. And so Gladness, he says, is taken away as far as he's concerned, and joy from the plentiful field is removed. And Isaiah would not even let others be happy. He says, ain't nobody going to be happy. We're not rejoicing in this. He says, I made their shouting to cease. When it's seen that Moab is weary and on the high place, the Bible says that he'll come to his sanctuary to pray, but he will not prevail. While Isaiah is broken over what's going to happen to Moab, he's also still very well aware that Moab's still going to go to the wrong place for answers. Still going to the wrong place. So he's going to go. He's going to go to his sanctuary, and he's going to pray. But it's empty prayers. Empty prayers. You know, think about that. Think about that. So Isaiah, he's upset because, again, this is tragic. This is bad, and he's not happy with what's going to, and by the way, he's not mad at God. He's broken over what's going to happen to the people there. Never once has he said he's angry at God about this, by the way. No, never once has he questioned God's judgment or whether it's just, because he knows it is. He's just broken for the people. And so whenever he looks at this and he sees it and he says, you know what? They're going to run to their sanctuary and they're going to pray, but they're not going to get an answer. Think about that. The pain of watching people turn to the wrong place in the midst of destruction. Can I tell you, we should have the same response in our nation. For those we sometimes get a little heated about them. We talk about them. We're not real friendly about them. But you know what, again, when we think about the judgment that they're going to face, listen, they're running and looking for answers. You can't convince me those people in Iran are not looking for answers. Here's the problem. They're running to the wrong place, and they're not going to get one. Because the God that they're going to is not going to answer because He ain't there. That should break our hearts for those people, because how many of them don't have a clue? Same thing in all these other countries. There's people in these other countries. I think of about China. Man, there's people in China that are looking for answers. But because they've been raised and taught to worship these false gods, when things get bad and they run to them. But guess what? They're running somewhere and to something that they're not going to get an answer from, because they don't exist. They were created by man. That should break our hearts, y'all. To know that they don't. How many of those people, lost as lost can be, and are looking, running in their times of need? I don't know about you, but I'm thankful that whenever I'm in my time of need, I run to a God that's going to hear me and He's going to answer me. They don't have that. Not everybody does. We don't realize that's a blessing we take for granted. Isaiah is broken over this. Verse 13 and 14. This is the word that the Lord has spoken concerning Moab since that time. But now the Lord hath spoken, saying, within 3 years, as the year of an hireling, and the glory of Moab shall be contemned, with all that great multitude, and the remnant shall be very small and feeble. Isaiah speaking, for the Lord announced that judgment would come upon Moab in 3 years. This judgment would humble Moab. The glory of Moab would be despised, and within 3 years, again, since we don't know the exact date of Isaiah's prophecy, it's impossible to independently verify the accuracy of within that 3 years. But in the phrasing, that this is the word which the Lord has spoken concerning Moab since that time, we gather that most of Isaiah chapter 15 and 16 was given at an earlier time, and then within 3 years, the within 3 years aspect was added at the right time at a later date, and I don't know, but I'm just going to take God at His word for it. It did come, period. I know that, but this prophecy assured God's people that the Lord is going to, listen, the Lord deals with His people the way He deals with His people. Amen? He those whom He loves, He does what? He chastens. But guess what? The wicked ain't exempt. The evil ain't exempt. The wrongdoers ain't exempt. And so this assures God's people that, hey, just as He has dealt with us, He's going to deal with them. But theirs is going to be worse. Theirs is going to be worse. Anybody have any thoughts, comments, or questions tonight?